The text arrived during my wife's funeral. I am still alive, trust no one. I'm Eric Harrison, and I thought I was about to bury the love of my life. What I didn't know was that Ellie had discovered her son's plan to poison her for a $2.8 million inheritance. And what he didn't know was that this simple veterinarian had some very special skills from my 5 years consulting with the FBI on animal poisoning cases. I looked down at my phone, looked up at the coffin, and for the first time in 3 days, I smiled. Jake Coleman sat in the front row, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. 29 years old, Wharton MBA, investment banker, pulling down $280,000 a year. He'd always called me just the animal doctor. Never thought I was smart enough for his mother. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from, because this is the story of how underestimating the quiet ones can cost you everything. Let me back up 3 months to show you exactly how Jake saw me. We were having Sunday dinner at Ellie's house in Hinsdale, the Whitmore family estate, 8,000 square feet, worth $1.2 million. Ellie inherited it when her parents died 2 years ago, along with their entire real estate fortune. Jake pulled up in his 2023 Porsche Cayenne. $89,000 lease, $1,200 a month. I was already there in my 2019 Ford F-150 with the clinic logo on the door. 78,000 miles, completely paid off. "Hey, Mom." Jake kissed Ellie's cheek, then looked at me. "Eric." Not, "Hey, Eric," or "How are you?" Just Eric. Ellie squeezed my hand under the table. She knew. "Jake, tell Eric about your promotion," she said. "Senior VP at Whitman Brothers Investment Bank." Jake straightened his tie. $280,000 base salary plus bonuses. "That's wonderful," I said. "Congratulations." "Thanks." He looked at my work shirt. Still dealing with sick puppies. I run Harrison Veterinary Clinic. 28 years treating everything from horses to hamsters. Annual revenue around $95,000. Not much by Jake's standards, but it's honest work. "Business is good," I said. "I'm sure it is." Jake smirked. "Simple life, simple problems." Ellie's jaw tightened. "Jake." "What?" "I'm just saying it must be nice not having to think about complex financial instruments or market volatility." He turned to his mother. "Speaking of which, Mom, have you updated your will lately?" "Jake," Ellie's voice dropped. "I'm just concerned about your financial planning. Estate taxes, inheritance structuring. These things are complicated. More complicated than veterinary toxicology?" I asked quietly. Jake laughed. "Come on, Eric. Giving shots to cats versus managing multi-million-dollar portfolios?" "Jake, that's enough." Ellie stood up. "Eric has a doctorate in veterinary medicine and was a forensic consultant for the FBI for 5 years. Jake's expression didn't change. "Forensic consultant for animal cases, right? Not exactly Wall Street." I stayed quiet. Let him think what he wanted. After dinner, Jake cornered his mother in the kitchen. I was loading dishes, but could hear everything. "Mom, you know I love Eric, but have you thought about what happens if something happens to you?" "What do you mean?" "Your will leaves everything to him. The house, the investments, everything. Is that really what Dad would have wanted? Ellie's first husband, Richard Coleman, died in a car accident when Jake was 8. Jake still wore his father's Rolex Submariner, $12,000 worth of watch. Your father's been gone 21 years, Jake. Eric is my husband now." "For how long? You've known him 3 years. Dad's family built this wealth over generations. And your father cheated on me for years before he died. Eric has been nothing but faithful." Jake's voice got harder. "Mom, I'm just saying. A guy who makes $95,000 a year marrying a woman worth almost $3 million? It looks like what? Like maybe his motives aren't pure." I set down the plate I was washing, real carefully. Ellie's voice went ice cold. "Get out of my house. Mom, now." Jake left without saying goodbye to me. Ellie came back to the kitchen with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be—" I dried my hands. "He's looking out for you. I understand that." "No, you don't understand. He's looking out for himself." But I did understand. Jake saw a simple veterinarian who got lucky, a guy who didn't deserve his mother's money. What Jake didn't see was the FBI toxicology certificate hanging in my office, or the fact that I'd helped solve 17 poisoning cases between 2015 and 2020. What Jake really didn't see was that his mother was a lot smarter than he gave her credit for, and that was going to be his first mistake. The inheritance Jake was so worried about wasn't just house money. Ellie's parents, George and Margaret Whitmore, had built a real estate empire over 40 years. Commercial properties, residential developments, apartment complexes. When they died in that plane crash in 2022, Ellie inherited everything. $2.8 million. Cash, properties, and investment accounts. Ellie showed me the will one evening in October. We were sitting in her home office, surrounded by family photos and legal documents. "Jake thinks he deserves this because he's blood family," she said. "And what do you think?" "I think my parents would want it to go to someone who'd use it wisely." She touched my hand. "They liked you, Eric. They saw how you took care of me. The will was clear. If Ellie died, everything went to me. If I died first, everything went to Jake. If we both died, Jake got it all." "But here's what Jake doesn't know," Ellie said. She pulled out another document. "I had this done last month. A codicil to the will. If Ellie died under suspicious circumstances, the inheritance would go into a trust managed by an independent board. Jake wouldn't see a penny for 10 years, and only then if he could prove he had nothing to do with her death." "Why would you do that?" Ellie hesitated. "Jake's been asking a lot of questions about the inheritance lately, and he's been having money problems." "What kind of problems?" She pulled out her laptop and showed me Jake's social media. Photos from expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, designer clothes. His wife Brittany's Instagram was even worse. Designer handbags, jewelry, spa days. His salary is $280,000, but look at this lifestyle. The Porsche lease alone is over $1,000 a month. That condo in Lincoln Park, $4,000 monthly rent. I did the math. Even with bonuses, Jake was living beyond his means. "There's more," Ellie said. She showed me a text message from Jake's wife. "Brittany sent this last month. Ellie, Jake won't talk to me about our finances. I found credit card statements showing $180,000 in debt. I'm scared." $180,000 in credit card debt, on top of his lifestyle expenses. And this. Ellie pulled up an article from the Chicago Tribune business section. Jake's bank is under investigation for risky cryptocurrency investments. Several employees lost their jobs. The article mentioned Jake by name. He'd been involved in a cryptocurrency trading scheme that lost the bank $2.3 million. No criminal charges, but his bonus was eliminated for 2 years. How much did Jake lose personally? According to Brittany, about $320,000, his entire investment portfolio. So Jake owed $180,000 on credit cards, lost $320,000 in crypto, and had his bonuses cut off. Total financial hole, $500,000. No wonder he was interested in his inheritance timeline. "Ellie, if Jake needs money, why don't you just help him?" I offered. Last Christmas, I offered to pay off his credit cards. You know what he said? I waited. He said he didn't want charity from someone who married below her station. That stung, but it also explained a lot. The thing is, Eric, Jake's always been entitled. Even as a kid, he thought the world owed him something because his father died young. I tried to teach him better, but his father's family always told him he was special, that he deserved the best of everything. And now he's 30 years old and realizing that the best of everything costs more than he can afford. Exactly. And the only thing standing between him and financial security is my life. We sat in silence for a minute. Ellie, Jake wouldn't actually, I don't know, maybe not. But Eric, I've been feeling sick lately. Stomach problems, headaches, fatigue. My doctor can't find anything wrong. A chill ran down my spine. When did this start? About 3 weeks ago. Right after Jake came over for dinner and made that comment about my will. 3 weeks. That was specific. Have you eaten or drunk anything Jake gave you? Just coffee. He's been bringing me coffee from that fancy place downtown. Says he wants to be a better son. My veterinary training kicked in. When an animal gets sick with no clear cause, you look for environmental factors. Changes in food, water, routine, or poison. Ellie, I need you to save that coffee. Don't drink any more of it. Eric, you're scaring me. Good, you should be scared. Because Jake wasn't just financially desperate. He was smart enough to plan, ruthless enough to act, and arrogant enough to think he'd never get caught. The inheritance was $2.8 million. Jake's debts totaled $500,000. Jake thought he was solving a math problem. He didn't realize he was about to face a toxicologist. The next Sunday, Jake brought coffee again. 2 cups from Intelligentsia, downtown Chicago's premium coffee shop. $16 each, Ethiopian single origin, served in their signature black cups. "Thought you and Eric might want to try this," Jake said, handing us the cups. "It's their new roast." Ellie looked at me. I gave the slightest shake of my head. "That's so thoughtful," Ellie said. She took a sip and made an appreciative sound. Delicious. But I watched her. She barely touched her lips to the cup. Jake sat across from us, sipping his own coffee. "So, Mom, I've been thinking about what we discussed last month." "Which part?" "Your financial planning. I talked to Kenneth Price. He's the lawyer who handled Dad's estate. He thinks you should consider restructuring your will." Kenneth Price. I made a mental note. "What kind of restructuring?" Ellie asked. "Well, leaving everything to Eric makes sense if you're planning to live another 30 years. But what if something happens to you?" "Something like what?" Jake shrugged. "Accidents happen. Health problems. You're 59, Mom. Dad was only 38 when he died." Ellie's hand tightened on her coffee cup. "Eric is 52 and in perfect health." "Sure, but Eric's not family. If something happens to both of you, what happens to the Whitmore legacy?" "The Whitmore legacy goes to people who deserve it." Jake's jaw tightened. "And I don't deserve it?" "That depends. Do you deserve it? I'm your son. And you're also a grown man who's made his own choices, some of them not very good choices." Jake set down his coffee cup hard. "Meaning?" "Meaning I know about the credit cards, Jake. I know about the cryptocurrency losses. Brittany told me." Jake's face went red. "Brittany had no right. She had every right. She's your wife, and she's scared." "Those losses were temporary. The crypto market is volatile, but long-term you've lost over $300,000 gambling on digital coins." "It wasn't gambling, it was investing." "Jake." My voice cut through the argument. "Your mother asked you a question. Do you deserve the inheritance?" Jake turned to me with pure contempt. "I don't think the hired help gets a vote in family discussions." "Jake!" Ellie slammed her coffee cup down. "What, Mom? He's a veterinarian. What does he know about wealth management or family legacy?" I stayed calm. "I know that someone who respects their mother doesn't call her husband hired help. You want to know what I know about you, Eric?" Jake stood up. "I know you make $95,000 a year treating animals. I know you drive a pickup truck with 100,000 miles. I know you shop at Target and eat at Applebee's." "Jake, stop," Ellie's voice was warning. "And I know that 3 years ago you were a lonely widower who got lucky when he met a rich woman at a charity event." The charity event. Ellie had volunteered at an animal rescue fundraiser. I donated my veterinary services for the adoption fair. We'd talked for 2 hours about everything except money. "Is that what you think happened?" I asked. "That's what I know happened. You saw an opportunity and you took it." I looked at Ellie. She was pale, probably from anger, but maybe from something else. "Jake," I said quietly, "your mother is feeling sick. Maybe we should continue this conversation another time." "She looks fine to me." But Ellie didn't look fine. She was sweating despite the cool October air, and her hands were shaking slightly. "Actually, I am feeling a little nauseous," she said. Jake's expression shifted to concern so quickly it looked rehearsed. "Oh no. What's wrong?" "I don't know. Stomach problems again." "Maybe it's the coffee," Jake said. "Sometimes Ethiopian beans are too acidic." I made another mental note. He knew exactly what kind of coffee he'd brought. "I'll be fine," Ellie said. "Jake, why don't you head home? Eric can take care of me." Jake looked like he wanted to argue, but then he nodded. "Sure. Feel better, Mom." He kissed her forehead. "Call me if you need anything." After Jake left, Ellie rushed to the bathroom. I heard her vomiting. When she came back, she was pale and shaky. "Eric, something's wrong." "I know. Let me see that coffee cup." I picked up her cup and smelled it. Coffee, cream, sugar. But underneath something else. Something bitter and slightly sweet at the same time. 28 years of veterinary medicine teaches you to recognize smells, particularly the smell of things that don't belong. "Ellie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay." "How many times has Jake brought you coffee in the last 3 weeks?" "4 times. Always on Sundays when he visits." And when did your stomach problems start? Ellie thought about it. 3 weeks ago. Right after... She stopped. Right after the first time he brought coffee. 4 coffee deliveries. 4 episodes of illness. Ellie, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't drink anything Jake gives you. Don't eat anything Jake brings. And don't tell him I said that. Eric, you're scaring me. I'm trying to keep you alive. Because the smell in that coffee cup wasn't just bitter and sweet. It was the smell of almonds. And bitter almonds in food where they don't belong usually means one thing. Cyanide, or something close to it. That night I couldn't sleep. Ellie was finally resting peacefully after I'd given her activated charcoal, standard treatment for mild poisoning in animals. It worked for humans, too. I sat in my home office, looking at the certificates on my wall. Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, University of Illinois, 1995. FBI Forensic Consultant Certificate, 2015 to 2020, Advanced Toxicology Training, Federal Law Enforcement Academy. Jake saw a simple country vet. He had no idea what those certificates really meant. From 2015 to 2020, I'd helped the FBI solve 17 poisoning cases. Not animals, people. Specifically, people who'd been poisoned with substances originally designed to kill animals. Rat poison, insecticides, antifreeze, even exotic toxins like ricin and abrin. The FBI had recruited me after I'd identified a rare plant toxin in a murder case in Springfield. Local police thought it was a heart attack. I'd seen the same symptoms in horses that had eaten poisonous weeds. Turned out a woman had been slowly poisoning her husband with oleander extract. Without my identification, he would have died, and she would have collected $1 million life insurance policy. I'd testified in federal court 8 times. Helped convict 6 murderers and 2 attempted murderers. My specialty was detecting poisons that mimicked natural illnesses, like whatever Jake was putting in Ellie's coffee. I pulled out my laptop and searched for Jake's name online. Social media, news articles, anything that might give me insight into his current situation. His LinkedIn profile was polished but concerning. Still listed as Senior VP at Whitman Brothers, but his recent posts had a desperate edge. Exploring new investment opportunities. Sometimes the best trades come from taking calculated risks. Fortune favors the bold. Then I found his wife's Instagram. Brittany Coleman, 26 years old, influencer lifestyle content. Recent posts told a different story than Jake's optimistic facade. 3 weeks ago. When your husband works late every night but the Erics keep coming. 2 weeks ago. Sometimes I wonder if I married the wrong person. Last week. Anyone know a good divorce lawyer? Asking for a friend. Jake's marriage was falling apart. His career was in trouble. His lifestyle was unsustainable. And his mother was worth $2.8 million. I searched for Kenneth Price, the lawyer Jake had mentioned. Found his website. Price & Associates, Estate Planning and Probate Law. 43 years of experience, specializing in complex inheritance matters and contested wills. His client testimonials were interesting. Kenneth helped us navigate a difficult family situation when my stepfather tried to claim my mother's inheritance. Price & Associates protected our family legacy from outside interference. Professional, discreet, and results-oriented. This wasn't a simple estate planning lawyer. This was someone who specialized in keeping inheritances within blood families. I called Ellie's lawyer, Margaret Stevens, who'd handled her parents' estate. "Eric, it's late. Is everything okay?" "Margaret, hypothetically, if someone wanted to challenge Ellie's will, how would they do it? Challenge it how? Say they claimed she wasn't competent when she made it, or that she was under undue influence." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Those are the 2 most common challenges. Why are you asking?" Jake mentioned getting advice from another lawyer, Kenneth Price. "Oh, Eric, Kenneth Price is not good news." "What do you mean?" "He's technically competent, but he specializes in what we call family warfare. He helps blood relatives contest wills when they feel cheated by step-parents or new spouses." "Has he been successful?" "More often than I'd like, especially when the deceased had a history of illness before death. Judges sometimes question whether someone was thinking clearly if they were sick." A chill ran through me. "What kind of illness?" "Memory problems, confusion, depression, anything that could suggest diminished capacity, or the kind of illness someone might have if they were being slowly poisoned." I thanked Margaret and hung up. Then I called my friend Gregory Walsh. Gregory was a private investigator, former Chicago PD detective. We'd worked together on 2 of the FBI poisoning cases. Eric, you're calling at 11 p.m. This better be good. Greg, I need a favor, and I need it kept completely confidential. What kind of favor? The kind that might save my wife's life. 3 days later, Ellie died. The funeral home was packed. Ellie had been active in local charities, and people loved her. The Methodist Church on Elm Street couldn't hold everyone. Jake sat in the front pew wearing a perfectly tailored black suit and his father's Rolex. He'd given a beautiful eulogy about his mother's generosity and love. "My mother was the most caring person I knew," he'd said, his voice breaking at exactly the right moments. "She gave everything to help others. Her legacy will live on through the people she touched." Touching words. If I didn't know better, I might have believed them. After the service, Jake approached me at the casket. "Eric, I know we've had our differences, but I want you to know I'm here for you." "Thank you, Jake." "We should talk soon about Mom's arrangements. The will reading, settling her affairs. I know this is hard, but there are practical matters to handle." Less than 6 hours after the funeral, and Jake was already talking business. "Of course, whatever needs to be done." Jake's expression softened into what looked like sympathy. "I know Mom left everything to you, but I hope we can work together. Family should stick together during difficult times." Family. Now I was family. "I appreciate that, Jake." "Kenneth Price is handling the legal aspects. He's very efficient with estate matters. We could probably have everything settled within the week." Within the week? Ellie hadn't even been buried yet. "That seems fast. Well, there's no point in dragging things out. Mom wouldn't want us to suffer through a long legal process." People were starting to leave the church. Jake looked around, then leaned closer. "Eric, between you and me, I think Mom would want me to help you with the inheritance. Managing that much money can be complicated for someone without financial experience." There it was, the offer to help manage my wife's money. "That's thoughtful of you." I mean, $2.8 million is a lot of responsibility. Investment decisions, tax implications, estate planning. My firm handles portfolios this size all the time. "And you'd be willing to help?" "For family? Of course. We could set up a management agreement. I'd handle the complex financial decisions, you'd keep the house and a comfortable living allowance. Everyone wins." "A comfortable living allowance? From my own wife's inheritance?" "What kind of allowance?" Jake smiled. "I was thinking maybe $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year, plus you'd keep the house. More than enough for someone with simple needs. $60,000 a year out of $2.8 million. Jake would control the rest." "That's very generous," I said. "I want to take care of you, Eric. Mom would want that." Other mourners were approaching to offer condolences. Jake straightened up and put on his grief face. "We'll talk more soon," he whispered. "Kenneth wants to meet tomorrow to start the paperwork." I shook hands with Jake and accepted sympathy from Ellie's friends. Everyone talked about what a wonderful woman she'd been, how much they'd miss her, how sorry they were for my loss. Mrs. Patterson from the animal rescue hugged me tight. "Eric, Ellie was so proud of you. She always talked about how lucky she was to find such a good man." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. You know, it's funny. I saw her just last week at the grocery store. She looked tired, but she was so excited about some trip you two were planning." "Trip?" Ellie and I hadn't planned any trips. "She said you were going to surprise everyone. Something about taking time to really enjoy life before it was too late." I smiled and nodded, but my mind was racing. What trip was Ellie talking about? Then I remembered the text message. "I am still alive. Trust no one." After the last mourner left, I stood alone by the casket. Jake approached again. "Eric, are you okay?" "Just saying goodbye. I understand. Take all the time you need." Jake checked his watch. "I have to head back to Chicago tonight, but Kenneth will call you tomorrow about the will reading." "Jake, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did your mother seem sick to you lately?" Jake's expression shifted slightly. "Sick how?" "Tired, nauseous, confused, like she wasn't feeling well." "Now that you mention it, yes. The last few times I saw her, she seemed off." "Why?" "Just wondering if I should have done more. Taken her to more doctors." Jake put his hand on my shoulder. "Eric, you did everything you could. Sometimes these things just happen. Mom was getting older, stress from Dad's anniversary coming up, financial worries about the inheritance taxes." "Financial worries? Ellie hadn't mentioned any financial worries to me. What kind of financial worries? Just the usual stuff with large estates. Mom was concerned about making sure everything was handled properly when she passed. She didn't want to burden you with complicated financial decisions. Another lie. Ellie had complete confidence in my ability to handle money. That was thoughtful of her. Mom was always thinking about other people. Even at the end. Jake's voice got emotional again. The last time I saw her, she kept saying she was sorry. Sorry for being such a burden. Sorry for being sick. Sorry for not having more time. Jake was good. Really good. If I didn't know the truth, I'd believe every word. Well, I should let you get going, I said. Yeah, long drive back to the city. Jake paused. Eric, I want you to know, whatever happens with the inheritance, I don't hold anything against you. Mom loved you, and that's what matters. Whatever happens with the inheritance, like it was still uncertain. Jake left, and I was alone with the casket. That's when my phone buzzed. Phase 1 complete. Meet me at the location we discussed. S. I looked around the empty church, then at the casket where my wife was supposedly lying. For the first time in 3 days, I genuinely smiled. Jake thought he'd won. He'd successfully poisoned his mother, delivered a convincing grief performance, and started positioning himself to control the inheritance. He had no idea that Ellie was very much alive, and he had no idea that his simple veterinarian stepfather had been recording every conversation we'd had for the past week. Jake wanted to play games with someone he thought was stupid. He was about to discover how wrong he'd been. Tomorrow's will reading was going to be very educational, for all of us. Kenneth Price's office was on the 42nd floor of the Willis Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows, mahogany furniture, law degrees from Harvard and Northwestern covering one wall. This was where serious money came to get serious legal work done. Jake arrived first, wearing another expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He looked confident, composed, a man about to collect his inheritance. Eric, thanks for coming. Jake stood and shook my hand. I know this is difficult. Kenneth Price looked exactly like what he was, a high-end lawyer who specialized in family warfare. Silver hair, $1,000 suit, eyes that calculated Ericable hours while you spoke. Mr. Harrison, my condolences on your loss. Mrs. Harrison was a remarkable woman. Thank you. Now, the will reading is fairly straightforward. Mrs. Harrison's assets total approximately $2.8 million, consisting of real estate, investment accounts, and liquid assets. Jake leaned forward slightly. As you know, Kenneth continued, Mrs. Harrison left everything to her husband, William Harrison, with the provision that if Mr. Harrison predeceases his wife, the inheritance would pass to Jake Coleman. Right, Jake said. But Kenneth, we discussed some potential complications. What complications? I asked. Kenneth adjusted his glasses. Well, Mr. Harrison, Jake has raised some concerns about your ability to manage such a substantial inheritance. What kind of concerns? Financial experience, primarily. Jake feels his mother may have been optimistic about your capabilities. Jake jumped in. Eric, it's not personal. It's just that $2.8 million requires sophisticated management, investment strategies, tax optimization, estate planning. These aren't things you learn taking care of animals. I see. That's why I've prepared an alternative arrangement, Kenneth said. He slid a document across the desk. A financial management agreement. Jake would handle investment decisions and major financial planning, while you'd receive a monthly allowance and keep the family home. I looked at the document. $5,000 per month, exactly as Jake had mentioned at the funeral. This protects you from the complexity of wealth management while ensuring the assets are professionally handled, Kenneth said, by Jake. Jake has extensive experience with portfolios this size. I set the document down. And if I don't agree to this arrangement? Kenneth and Jake exchanged glances. Well, Kenneth said, Jake would be forced to contest the will. On what grounds? Diminished capacity, Jake said quietly. Mom was sick for weeks before she died, confused, nauseous, not thinking clearly. She may not have been competent when she signed the will. Or, Kenneth added, undue influence. A much younger husband pressuring an older sick woman to leave him money that rightfully belongs to her blood family. There it was, the real plan. If I cooperated, Jake would control the money through a management agreement. If I didn't cooperate, Jake would contest the will and probably win, given Ellie's mysterious illness before death. Either way, Jake got the inheritance. That's a serious accusation, I said. It's not an accusation, Jake said. It's just legal reality. Mom was sick, Eric. Really sick. People noticed. Who noticed? Her friends, the people at church. Even her doctor was concerned about her mental state. Dr. Amanda Foster, Ellie's physician and longtime friend. Interesting that Jake knew about her concerns. What did Dr. Foster say? That Mom was showing signs of confusion and depression, classic symptoms of diminished capacity. I nodded thoughtfully. So your position is that Ellie wasn't thinking clearly when she left everything to me? I'm saying she was sick and maybe not making the best decisions, Jake said, because she was being poisoned. The room went completely silent. Jake's face didn't change, but Kenneth's pen stopped moving. What did you say? Jake asked. I said she was being poisoned, with ricin specifically, small doses over several weeks, designed to cause illness that would look like natural causes. Jake stood up. Eric, that's insane. Who would poison Mom? Someone who needed her to appear incompetent before she died. Someone who knew that a sick woman's will could be contested. Someone who brought her coffee every Sunday for 3 weeks. Are you accusing me of... I'm stating facts. Ellie was poisoned with ricin. I have toxicology reports proving it. I also have recordings of your conversations with Mr. Price about contesting the will. Kenneth's face had gone pale. Mr. Harrison, these are very serious allegations. Yes, they are. Kenneth, did Jake tell you he'd been researching ricin poisoning on his laptop, or that he'd lost over $300,000 in cryptocurrency investments? Jake sat back down hard. You can't prove any of this. Actually, I can. I pulled out my phone and played an audio recording. Jake's voice, clear as day. Kenneth, if Mom seems confused or sick before she dies, can we use that to contest the will? Kenneth's voice, absolutely. Diminished capacity is an excellent strategy, especially if there are witnesses to her illness. Jake's voice, and the ricin won't show up in a normal autopsy? Kenneth's voice, not unless they specifically test for it. And why would they? She's been sick for weeks. The silence in the room was deafening. Where did you get that recording? Jake whispered. From someone who's been listening to all your calls for the past month. That's when the door opened. Ellie walked in. Jake's reaction was everything I'd hoped for. His mouth fell open, his face went white, and for about 10 seconds he couldn't speak. Hello, Jake, Ellie said calmly. Mom? Jake's voice cracked. But you're dead. I saw the funeral. You saw a closed-casket funeral for someone who faked their death to expose your murder plot. Jake looked from Ellie to me to Kenneth, then back to Ellie. This isn't possible. What's not possible is that you tried to poison me for money. Ellie sat down across from Jake. Dr. Foster helped me stage the death. Gregory Walsh provided surveillance equipment, and Eric identified the ricin you were putting in my coffee. Jake turned to Kenneth. Say something. But Kenneth was already gathering his papers. I'm afraid I need to withdraw from this case. You can't withdraw. We had an agreement. We had an agreement based on your mother being actually dead and you being innocent of murder, Kenneth said. Neither of those things appears to be true. Ellie pulled out a tablet and showed Jake the screen. Security camera footage of him entering her house at 2:17 a.m. the night before her death. This is you breaking into my house to plant fake medical records that would support the diminished capacity claim. More footage. Jake in the kitchen, tampering with coffee cups. This is you adding ricin to my coffee maker reservoir? Another clip. Jake and Kenneth meeting at a restaurant downtown. This is you paying Kenneth $50,000 to help you steal my inheritance. Jake was breathing hard now, his confident demeanor completely gone. Mom, I can explain. Explain what? That you were slowly killing me for money? That you planned to make me look incompetent and then contest my will? That you called my husband hired help while you plotted to steal everything my parents worked for? Jake looked at me. Eric, you have to understand, I was desperate. The debts, the marriage falling apart, my career. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking very clearly, I said. Ricin poisoning to simulate illness. Documented confusion to support diminished capacity. A corrupt lawyer to contest the will. You planned this for months. It wasn't supposed to kill you, Mom. Just make you sick enough to seem confused. Ellie's voice was ice cold. Jake, ricin doesn't work that way. The doses you were giving me were absolutely fatal. You were murdering me, slowly and painfully. That's when the door opened again. 2 FBI agents walked in, followed by Gregory Walsh. Jake Coleman, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and inheritance fraud. Jake looked around the room desperately. This is entrapment. You set me up. We documented your crimes, Ellie said. There's a difference. As they handcuffed Jake, he looked at his mother one last time. Mom, I'm your son. No, Ellie said quietly. My son would never try to murder me for money. The FBI agents led Jake away. Kenneth had already left, probably to call his own lawyer. Ellie and I sat alone in the expensive office, looking out at Chicago's skyline. How do you feel? I asked. Like I just learned who my son really is. Jake had never seen us coming. The simple veterinarian and the trusting mother had outplayed the sophisticated banker and his high-powered lawyer. Quiet power wins every time. The arrests happened fast after that. Jake was booked at the Federal Detention Center on attempted murder charges. The FBI had enough evidence to hold him without bail. The recordings, the ricin residue in Ellie's coffee maker, the browser history showing months of poison research. Kenneth Price was arrested the same day at his office. Conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to attempted murder, and attorney misconduct. The Illinois State Bar suspended his license immediately. I watched the news coverage that evening from Ellie's living room. The same living room where Jake had called me hired help just weeks earlier. Investment banker Jake Coleman was arrested today in an elaborate plot to poison his mother for a $2.8 million inheritance. The reporter stood outside the Willis Tower. Coleman, a senior vice president at Whitman Brothers Investment Bank, allegedly used ricin to slowly poison his 49-year-old mother while working with attorney Kenneth Price to contest her will. Ellie muted the TV. It's strange seeing it on the news. Strange how? Jake's whole life was about image, reputation, status. Now everyone knows what he really is. The phone had been ringing all day. Reporters, friends, distant relatives who'd heard the news. Ellie had stopped answering. But one call we did take was from FBI agent Patricia Martinez, who'd been assigned to Jake's case. Mrs. Harrison, I wanted to give you an update on the investigation. What did you find? Your son has been planning this for at least 6 months. We found evidence of ricin purchases, detailed research on inheritance law, and communication with Mr. Price dating back to last October. October. Right around the time Jake's crypto investments collapsed. What about his financial situation? It's worse than you thought. Total debts of over $600,000. His wife filed for divorce yesterday, and his employer terminated him this morning. $600,000 in debt. No wonder Jake was desperate. Agent Martinez, what happens now? Mr. Coleman will likely plead guilty to attempted murder and conspiracy charges. He's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. 15 to 20 years. Jake was 29. He'd be nearly 50 when he got out. And Kenneth Price? Mr. Price is cooperating with the investigation. He's provided details about other similar cases he's handled. This wasn't his first inheritance scheme. After Agent Martinez hung up, Ellie and I sat quietly. Any regrets? I asked. About Jake? No. About the fact that I raised someone capable of murder for money? Yes. Ellie, Jake made his own choices. I know, but I keep thinking about what his father would say. Richard had his flaws, but he never would have done something like this. The doorbell rang. Gregory Walsh stood on the porch with a bottle of wine and a stack of documents. Celebration, he said, holding up the wine. Documentation, he said, holding up the papers. We sat around Ellie's kitchen table while Gregory laid out the complete evidence file. 47 hours of audio recordings, Gregory said. Jake never suspected Ellie was recording their conversations. How did you get so much? Jake called his mother every day after he started the poisoning, checking on her symptoms, asking how she felt, suggesting she see a doctor. Classic murderer behavior, staying close to monitor the victim. Ellie shook her head. He was so concerned about my health. I thought he was finally being a good son. He was monitoring his crime, Gregory said, making sure the ricin was working but not killing you too quickly. Gregory showed us more evidence. Bank records showing Jake's $50,000 payment to Kenneth Price. credit card statements revealing Jake's desperate financial situation, text messages between Jake and his wife showing their marriage was falling apart. "The thing that amazes me," Gregory said, "is how arrogant Jake was throughout this whole process." "What do you mean?" "He never considered that you might be smarter than him. He saw a veterinarian and a trusting mother, and he assumed you'd be easy to manipulate." That was Jake's fatal flaw. Arrogance. He'd underestimated everyone around him. Ellie's intelligence, my professional background, Gregory's investigative skills. Jake had been so focused on his own superiority that he'd never considered the possibility that his victims might fight back. "Speaking of which," Gregory said, "Eric, Jake still doesn't know about your FBI background, does he?" "No. Kenneth Price looked shocked when I mentioned the toxicology reports. That's because Jake told Kenneth you were just a simple country vet, no relevant experience, easily intimidated." Ellie laughed for the first time in weeks. "Easily intimidated?" "Jake never bothered to research the man his mother married," Gregory said. "If he'd spent 5 minutes on Google, he would have found articles about your FBI consultation work. I thought about that. Jake had dismissed me so completely that he'd never even been curious about my background. He'd seen the veterinary clinic and stopped looking." "It's poetic justice," Ellie said. "Jake's snobbery made him sloppy. More than sloppy. It made him stupid. The local news was running the story again. Jake's arrest photo, the FBI leading him away in handcuffs, his expensive suit wrinkled and his confidence completely gone. Whitman Brothers Investment Bank released a statement today saying they had terminated Jake Coleman's employment immediately upon learning of the charges. Jake's career was over. His marriage was over. His freedom was gone for the next 20 years. And all because he'd thought he was smarter than everyone else. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Ellie said. "What?" "Jake used to say that quiet people were weak people, that if you weren't aggressive and loud, you weren't really succeeding. And now? Now I think quiet people are the ones you should be most afraid of. Because we'd been quiet, Jake never saw us coming. Quiet power had won again." The fallout from Jake's arrest rippled through every part of his life. Whitman Brothers Investment Bank didn't just fire Jake. They launched an internal investigation into all his client accounts. The Chicago Tribune ran a front-page story about the attempted murder case, with Jake's photo under the headline, "Banker Accused of Poisoning Mother for Inheritance." Jake's professional reputation was destroyed overnight. His wife Brittany filed for divorce within 48 hours of his arrest. She released a statement through her lawyer. "I am shocked and horrified by the allegations against my husband. I had no knowledge of any of these activities and am cooperating fully with law enforcement." Brittany also filed for emergency protection of their assets. Jake's Porsche was repossessed. Their Lincoln Park condo went into foreclosure. The $12,000 Rolex that had belonged to Jake's father was seized as evidence. But the most serious consequences were criminal. Federal prosecutor James Mitchell held a press conference 3 days after Jake's arrest. Jake Coleman faces charges of attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, inheritance fraud, and interstate commerce violations related to the purchase and transport of ricin. Each charge carried significant prison time. Attempted murder alone was 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Mr. Coleman's actions represent a calculated, premeditated attempt to murder his mother for financial gain, Mitchell continued. The evidence against him is overwhelming. Kenneth Price fared slightly better, but only slightly. The Illinois State Bar revoked his license permanently. He pled guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for testimony against Jake. Price's law firm collapsed within a week. 40 years of legal practice destroyed by one inheritance scheme. But Jake still wouldn't accept responsibility. From his jail cell, Jake gave an interview to a local reporter. "I never intended to hurt my mother seriously," Jake said. "The ricin doses were small, designed to cause temporary illness, not death." The FBI toxicologist who testified at Jake's bail hearing disagreed. "The cumulative dose Mr. Coleman administered over 3 weeks was absolutely fatal," Dr. Robert Chen told the court. "Without medical intervention, Mrs. Harrison would have died within days." Jake's story kept changing. First he claimed innocence. Then he claimed the ricin was supposed to be non-fatal. Then he claimed he was framed. None of it mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. Audio recordings of Jake planning the poisoning, Video surveillance of Jake breaking into Ellie's house. Ricin residue in Ellie's coffee maker with Jake's fingerprints. Browser history showing months of poison research on Jake's computer. Jake's trial was scheduled for 8 months later, but his lawyer was already discussing plea bargain options. Mr. Coleman is looking at a minimum of 15 years if convicted on all charges, his public defender told reporters. A plea agreement might reduce that to 10 to 12 years. 10 to 12 years minimum. Jake would be over 40 when he got out of prison. His investment banking career would be over. His marriage was already over. His reputation was destroyed. Most importantly, he'd never get Ellie's inheritance. The attempted murder conviction would permanently disqualify Jake from any claim to his mother's estate. Ellie decided to use the inheritance differently than originally planned. I'm establishing a foundation, she told me. The Whitmore Foundation for Domestic Violence Prevention. That's perfect. Women who are being financially abused, threatened, or manipulated by family members. They'll have resources to fight back. The foundation would be funded with $1 million from Ellie's inheritance. The rest would go to various charities, with a significant portion donated to the FBI's forensic training program. Jake would have killed his mother for $2.8 million. Instead, that money would help protect other potential victims. There's irony in that, Ellie said. Jake's greed is going to fund programs that stop people like Jake. Justice served in multiple ways. Jake had gambled everything on a murder scheme that he thought couldn't fail. Instead, he'd lost everything and would spend the next decade in prison. The entitled banker who'd called me hired help was now an inmate. Status reversal complete. 6 months later, Ellie and I were having coffee in the same kitchen where Jake had tried to poison her. Different coffee, of course. We'd thrown out the old coffee maker and bought a new one. Some memories are better replaced than cleaned. How are you feeling about everything? I asked. Stronger, Ellie said without hesitation. Jake spent years making me doubt myself, making me feel guilty for not giving him everything he wanted. Now I understand that was manipulation. Jake had been sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for the first 12 years. His plea bargain had fallen through when prosecutors discovered he'd been planning similar schemes against elderly clients at his investment bank. The foundation is doing well, Ellie continued. We've helped 43 women escape financially abusive situations. The Whitmore Foundation had grown beyond our expectations. Ellie's story had inspired other victims to come forward, and donations had poured in from people who understood what it meant to be underestimated and targeted. Any regrets about how we handled things? You mean about letting Jake think he'd succeeded? About faking my death and recording him? Yes, Ellie smiled. Eric, Jake chose to poison me. We just chose to catch him. There's a difference between justice and revenge. That was true. We'd never tried to hurt Jake beyond exposing his crimes and protecting Ellie. Everything that happened to Jake afterward was the natural consequence of his own actions. What's next for us? I was thinking about that. Ellie took my hand. Jake always said I married below my station, that you were just a simple veterinarian who got lucky, and I think I married exactly the right person, someone who values family over money, intelligence over status, and justice over revenge. Ellie had learned to set boundaries. With Jake, with entitled people in general, with anyone who thought they could manipulate her. I'd learned that quiet strength often wins against loud arrogance. Jake had learned that underestimating people can cost you everything. The veterinarian and the heiress had beaten the banker and the lawyer, not through wealth or connections, but through patience, intelligence, and careful planning. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own choices. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and let me know in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated because of your profession or background? Because quiet power wins every time.